one is trying to make one. CNN's Alexandra Field is in Boston. She's been following this trial. Any surprises in Clark's remarks, Alex? Because we know she's not trying to say that Tsarnaev didn't do this. In fact, she's fully admitting that.
Right, Brianna. I think actually the surprise really came in the opening statements when she did look at her client, the defendant, and say it was him. The closing arguments have actually pretty well reflected the trajectory of those opening statements, that trajectory being to acknowledge the horror of the events that have led to this trial, to acknowledge the defendant's responsibility for those acts. Here's where the difference comes into play. In the opening statements, Judy Clark was tasked with revealing to the jury her theory, the defense's strategy here, which is to prove that Jahar was influenced by his older brother Tamerlan. Now, fast forward 5 weeks, you've had 96 different witnesses, 16 days of testimony, countless pieces of evidence. So it's now Judy Clark's job to connect the dots and say, here is the evidence, here is the proof that was established over the course of the case, which, legitimizes our theory that Tamerlan led and Jahar followed. So she's trying to tick through those things. She's reflecting back on the video that the jury had seen of Tamerlan physically walking ahead of Jahar on Boylston Street before those bombs were placed. She's showing receipts and images of Tamerlan Tsarnaev purchasing the backpacks that carried those bombs, Tamerlan Tsarnaev purchasing the BBs, and she's trying to hit home the point that the defense has dwelled on throughout much of this trial, saying that Tamerlan really had the bulk of the research that was online on the defendant's computer as well as on Tamerlan's computer, but the defense has suggested the whole time that these jihadist materials, instructions for making a bomb came first from Tamerlan's computer and then were transferred to Jahar's computer. So, Brianna, what does this all serve to do? It does, again, look ahead to the sentencing phase of this trial when the jury could be asked to look at the death penalty if he's convicted on one of these 17 charges that bear a possible death sentence. How much does it matter right now before the jurors go out to consider these 30 different counts? Well, the prosecution has been very clear here, Brianna. 3 of the charges we're looking at are conspiracy. So, of course, they'll look for those connections between Tamerlan and Jahar. But the bulk of these charges also include aiding and abetting, and that's the point that they want jurors to take home. No matter who influenced who, no matter who had what first, the prosecution wants the jury to acknowledge, hey, Jahar played a role in these crimes, and without him, this wouldn't have been what it was, Brianna.
All right, Alexandra Field, we'll be watching it with you. Thank you. I want to bring in our legal panel now. In New York, we have CNN analyst and former federal prosecutor Sunny Hostin, and we have defense attorney Robert Schalk. So you have Judy Clark, you guys, who has her work cut out for her here. How does she convince this jury that this was not Jahar's idea and that really the jury should spare Jahar's life? What do you think, Sunny?
I think it's going to be difficult. We all knew, Brianna, from the very beginning that this was not really a case about whether or not he did it. This wasn't a whodunit case. It was really a case, and it remains a case, of why. And so I suspect that the jury will certainly come back with a guilty verdict on probably every single count. The real question is, can Judy Clark convince this jury that he deserves any sort of mercy? And I wonder if that is possible without Tsarnaev getting on the stand, quite frankly, and showing some sort of remorse. We've been watching him in the courtroom. He hasn't been animated. He hasn't shown any remorse. And the jury, I'm quite sure, has been watching him. So without hearing from this defendant, without hearing remorse, without showing this jury that he is not completely radicalized and was sort of under the thumb of his older brother, I can't imagine that Judy Clark can show this jury, given the amount of evidence that they have against him, that she can show this jury that he deserves to have his life spared.
Okay, so Robert, if he's your client, would you put Jahar Tsarnaev on the stand to try to get some sympathy, or might that just backfire?
Yeah, I mean, sympathy in this case, I don't even think it could exist. You're going to have to rely on what you have here. I wouldn't put him on the stand personally. I just don't think you can gain anything from it. Even if he gets on the stand and attempts to make some semblance of an apology, it's going to fall on deaf ears. I mean, he's sitting there and with the family members in the courtroom as well. He had opportunities, obviously, either to address this with law enforcement during his arrest. Didn't happen. So what Judy Clark needs to do, and what she's been doing this entire time, is she's planting those seeds that the older brother was the leader leader here, and he was merely following in his older brother's footsteps. However, she has been, cut off at the pass, and there's been roadblocks as the judge has not allowed certain lines of questioning and certain lines of cross-examination. I mean, she is a very, very talented attorney. She has spared very famous defendants the death penalty over the course of her career. I just, in this situation, do not see her being able to do that.
She's gone so quickly through this, the defense has. Do you think that's a good idea in this case?
Well, in this case, yes, because I think you gain a little bit of credibility with the jury immediately when you come out and you say, listen, this is a stipulated trial. He did it. He was a part of it. And I'm sure some of them were surprised that she even came out and admitted that from the beginning. So she gained that credibility, and she's not wasting their time with tedious cross-examination because she knows they're going to come out and say guilty. The only thing she's looking to do is, again, plant those seeds of a young kid who's in his early 20s being influenced by his brother in hopes that it spares his life.
Okay, and Sonny, I mean, I just wonder, how does she make this case that Tsarnaev was not self-radicalized? How does a jury believe that? Because you've got these photos of him with flags from a radical group. There's computer evidence that found him researching jihadi material. How does she make that case?
I think it's going to be very difficult, especially because we know that there's evidence when he was in that boat hiding from authorities. He also wrote several lines that indicated that he is self-radicalized and that he wanted, America to suffer. And so I think it's going to be very difficult. Although in the death penalty, when you're talking about a federal trial, the defense only needs one person because it has to be a unanimous vote. So the defense only needs one person to be convinced that his life should be spared. And you've seen sort of in the courtroom, you have seen her reach over, fix his tie, sort of touch him, trying at every turn, at what defense attorneys do pretty well, especially Judy Clark, and trying to normalize him, make the jury relate to him as a person, not just this horrible monster. But again, without any testimony from him, perhaps without testimony from his friends or his family members, I think this is going to be very, very difficult for her, especially because most of the cases where she's been successful, or I should say many of the cases, there has been a plea deal. So in return for not seeking the death penalty, she's gotten these guilty pleas. This is a trial, and so I think it's going to be very, very difficult for her.
Yeah, it is going to be tough, no doubt. All right, Robert Schalk, thank you so much. Sonny Hostin, thanks to you as well.
Thank you.
And next,